Robert, thank you for doing this interview. So you are a lifelong Phoenix resident.
Lifelong Phoenix resident.
Tell us about how Phoenix has changed, and in some ways for the worse since you were young.
Well, Phoenix was always a smaller, big city. You know, we were still a bigger city, but growing up here, I've seen it where when I was going through high school, we always had a large migrant population, people coming in here. We're close to the border. But I became a police officer in 1981, got out of the police academy. And a lot of my career coincided with the entry or the introduction of crack cocaine or cocaine. But then once crack cocaine showed up, at one time the cocaine used to come from LA, from the Colombians to the Mexicans, the Mexican drug cartels, then it would come into Phoenix. So we saw the violence associated with the cocaine explosion, which then became crack cocaine, which was then being sold to black street gangs, Mexican American street gangs who are Hispanics of Mexican parents. They're born here, but their parents are born in Mexico, and they form what we call your traditional street gangs, Hispanic street gangs here. Once they all got involved in the cocaine sales, if you look at anything that's happening, Chicago, Baltimore, any major city that has a large problem with homicides, violence, people think they're just gangs slugging it out for territory. No, they're gangs slugging it out for territory, for a block, for a neighborhood, for the right to sell that product that's coming from Mexico. And so now, because it's so lucrative, they're going to fight for a neighborhood because there's so much money to gain for selling that illicit product, whether it's cocaine, whether it's methamphetamine now, also heroin for a long time, and now with fentanyl. It's a big money pusher. So what happens, if you look at what's going on in some of these major U.S. cities where you have spikes in, homicides, you can look at it and you can say, well, the nexus is Mexican drug cartels in Mexico sending a product to the U.S. and the U.S. here you have much of the time they're U.S. born gangs who have a connection, a family member or some connection to a Mexican drug cartel. Most of the cartel members, the actual members, stay in Mexico, but they might have a family member they send up here to run the distribution, and then you got a lot of U.S. born criminals who are moving the product. So now you have neighborhoods, whether it's Chicago, LA, Phoenix, Baltimore, St. Louis, you have street level thugs fighting for the right to sell that product on that block. So if you have a dispute that, hey, this is our area, this is our neighborhood, and you get a war, then you get all these homicides. All you have to do is look right now. Last year in San Diego, normally there's this giant wall that prevents illegals coming across our border and that sector. They might come through the desert, but if you look at homicide rate in Tijuana, they had about 2,000 homicides in Tijuana last year. 2,000 homicides where San Diego might get 50. I mean, it's just separated by a wall.
Are you saying walls work?
Yeah, walls work. Walls work, and people don't see that. If you go to Juarez, one year, Ciudad Juarez had 3,200 homicides in 1 year. You cross into El Paso, I think they had like 12. If you go to El Paso, if you've been there, they got this major wall. Now, if you're going to cross, you have to go out into the desert or out into the area that the rural areas where there's no wall, where the wall stops, and that's where people are. That's where the Gulf Cartel, that's where La Línea, that's where the Cartel del Noreste are crossing people, or gangs that are paying a tax to these cartels. If you look at any of this human smuggling that's occurring along our southern border, a lot of the groups that are crossing people, the illegal aliens or coyotes or polleros, as we call them in Spanish, those groups are having to pay a tax to the cartel that controls that smuggling route. No drug cartel will allow you to cross people to a smuggling route that they've already established by fighting for, by losing people, personnel. So if you're a smuggling group, the only way you could cross people through these sectors is paying a, a tax.
Yeah, it's a
Pay a
toll.
tax. It's
Yeah,
a toll. It's a
yeah.
toll.
And a hefty toll, not
Yeah, it's
not a few
toll.
coins in the, yeah.
And if you are caught crossing people through these areas, which is a cartel smuggling route that they've already established, and you're not paying, and you've already been warned, uh, you're going to be the next YouTube sensation on these videos coming out of Mexico where they're interrogating you and they're getting a chainsaw and you're cutting you to pieces or they're beheading you. But first they have you make a statement, don't do this. And the next thing you know, you're in an ice chest. This happens all the time.
Yeah.
These videos do not make it to the US, but if you go to the Spanish media,
Yeah.
locations there, you can find them.
So it seems to me, Robert, that Biden's open border and the open border radicalism of people like Katie Hobbs, it's been wonderful for the cartels, hasn't it?
It's been a moneymaker for them. They've made money hand over fist. It's been very lucrative to them. And obviously, well, like here in Phoenix, where you have the most dangerous thing with this open borders, we have no idea who these people are. When they cross the border, I worked the street. When I was a street cop, when I worked narcotics, when I worked gangs, you stop, you make contact with somebody out on the street, an illegal alien, and they have no ID. And you'll ask them, well, you got to figure out who they are. Well, the only identification we have is we almost have to go on an honor system. What's your name? My name is Jose Lopez Garcia, and this is my birthday. Well, we would have to take them down, fingerprint them. Well, the fingerprints will tell us otherwise if they have come in contact with Border Patrol or they've been previously arrested. So sometimes you'd have a guy that we would stop. My name is Jose Lopez Garcia. I've never been arrested. And all of a sudden, here comes their record. They have 21 aliases. They have 15 birth dates that they have used. But in reality, we have no idea who they really are. We use the very first name they ever gave when they were arrested is considered their master name. And that's the name we use as their original name unless we get documents. So we have no idea who these people are. And we don't have a way of communicating with Mexican law enforcement for the most part, unless it's somebody, a special case, a murder suspect. There's just not an interchange. They don't have a system.
Well,
like
and by the
we
way,
do.
too, that's Mexico, which at least tries to be cooperative. You have countries like Venezuela, which refuses to cooperate, right? I mean, so we have zero way of vetting anybody
No.
from Venezuela, for example.
No.
Zero.
None. And we have no idea. I work cases here in Phoenix where, an example I like to use, there was a guy, there was a triple homicide in South Phoenix. We get called out. 3 guys had been stripped naked, bound and gagged, feet tied together, hands behind their back, and they were beaten. I mean, beaten to a pulp. Their throats were slit, shot in the head. One of them, they stuck a broomstick up his rear end, and it's pretty brutal. One of the victims in that homicide, I didn't recognize. I hadn't seen him in years. I went to high school with him.
Wow.
He had become a large marijuana dealer, got a load stolen. And when the cartel, the Mexican drug gang that supplied them came and asked for those, hey, you lost a load, you still got to pay us. He refused to pay, so there was a dispute. They came over. The group that he was getting his marijuana from, we found out later, they sent a hit team from Mexico. They came across the desert illegally, went to the house, stormed the place, tied them up, killed them, left 200 pounds of marijuana. They didn't care about the marijuana. They went there to kill him and send a message.
So these are brutal cartel tactics,
right,
here in the United States,
here in the United States,
in Arizona.
And one of the things you asked before, you said, what difference what changes have I seen? Early on in my career, we would get, regular homicides where somebody here and the neighbor, they have a dispute, somebody shoots somebody. Homicides were always solved. 85, 90% or even more clearance rate because this guy knew this guy, everybody knew who they were. When the Mexican drug gang started coming in and started engaging in violence, suddenly we have a victim who we have no idea who he is. We don't know where he's from. We know he's Mexican or he's from somewhere down south, just by the way he's dressed, his tattoos. And the suspect, we have no idea who he is. If you're doing a homicide investigation, you want to at least find out who is this guy, and then you could go from there.
Right.
And we started getting homicide victims that were being tied up, tortured, exactly what you would see in Mexico. That type of violence. Uh, Victims being dumped in. Back then when Sheriff Joe was here, they would go to the county area and wrap some homicide victim in a rug or a piece of carpet. They would be in a house, kill somebody, get a box cutter, cut a piece of carpet, roll their victim, take them to somewhere, dump them out in the desert. Well, they're being found in the county area, but later on we'd found out, oh, well, he was actually killed at this house. We were seeing levels of violence that we'd never seen before. And our homicide clearance rate for our homicide investigators went from 90% solving to 30, 35%. So we had no idea who they were.
Yeah.
That means you have mass murderers running around, because it's not like they're going to do one. These are people that get hired by the cartels. Many times they stay in Mexico, and when they need someone to get hit, if they don't find somebody here, they'll send somebody up, one of their trusted people, come across the border, go do the thing, here's your money. We don't solve those. So they just keep crossing the border. And, you know, and that's what we say. If you, I mentioned earlier, Tijuana, Mexico. Tijuana with 2,000 homicides last year. I've worked in Mexico. They only solve, we say 5%. We're being very generous.
That's generous, yeah.
Yeah, probably 3%, 2% of their homicides.
Yeah.
Think about this, 2,000 homicides and they only solve 2%. There's mass murderers running around there. And there's not a magic invisible barrier at our border that prevents them from crossing.
Well, under Joe Biden, it was the opposite.
Yeah,
he was waving them in.
Waving them in.
Incentivizing them to come.
Right.
All right, let me ask you about this, because somebody watching this might say, well, you know what? My family and I, we're not drug traffickers. We're not in danger from these people. Do regular innocent Americans suffer? Is there pain inflicted upon regular folks, law-abiding Americans?
This is the way I like to, I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm a first generation born American, grew up in inner city Phoenix. It was a low income area. These thugs that come from Mexico or Central America, they're not going to go to the neighborhood that I live in now. I mean, I'm safe there. I was able to make it out. I worked hard, got out. They're going to go to an inner city neighborhood, and they go to the inner city neighborhood, and if we're not deporting them, they get arrested and they get released, that they're not going to go to court. They go into these inner city neighborhoods and they're terrorizing low-income people, right, who are U.S. citizens,
yep,
who cannot get out of there.
And a lot of them are black and brown.
Yeah, a lot of them are black and brown.
Yep.
They're the low-income areas. And it's like, are we going to say, oh, well, tough luck, it's your problem.
Right.
Also, you have a problem where they're living here. These cartels, these drug gangs that have connections to drug cartels are living here in the city, and they're driving around, and they ever have, we've had a couple of shootings where we called it the shootout at the OK Corral. It was a Pep Boys, and it was a human smuggling gangs got in an argument over an exchange of money that had to be paid for somebody that had been kidnapped. And they thought that one group was going to show up with the money. Instead, they pulled out guns at rush hour, 24th Street in McDowell over here, and people are running, cars are getting hit. There was another on the I-10 coming in from Tucson.
The real OK Corral is in Arizona, right? Not too far from here in Tombstone. And you're saying this was a modern version of that kind of mayhem, and innocent bystanders absolutely could have been killed.
Bullets are flying and everything.
Let me ask you about this too, because I don't want it to only be the inner city. I understand that.
Right.
The inner city suffers disproportionately. But let's talk about regular suburban America and some of the threats to them. Fentanyl coming over to this country. A lot of suburban, particularly young people, college kids, young folks, they think they're taking a relatively safe drug, right? But it's got fentanyl in it that's crossing over Joe Biden's open border, has been for years. And all of a sudden, that drug's not safe at all. They're dead.
These kids that are buying, a lot of these kids, college students or whatever, they think they're getting, that somebody got into their mother or father's medicine cabinet and got some Valium or some other prescription. Yeah. So they get these pills without knowing that it is a pill made in Mexico with Chinese precursor chemicals. They show up at show up in Mexico by ship to the harbors, get transported to primarily northern Mexico. They set up super labs. The drug cartels have learned, they've got their own chemists that set up a super lab Well, now they're mass producing thousands and thousands of fake prescription meds, and there's no quality control.
Right.
The guy that's you running the pill press might be high on meth.
Right.
He might be
This
high
is
on,
not
yeah,
Walgreens.
no,
Right.
it's not
Yeah.
Walgreens. So what happens is those pills get smuggled across the U.S., primarily to ports of entry, inside load, they hide them, and then they get distributed. Well, you get a high school kid in, one of the suburbs that somehow they get these pills and they think, and they're cheap. They're really cheap. They get these pills and they think it's from somebody's parents' medicine cabinet. And when DEA does quantitative analysis on these pills, different batches, 1 out of every 4, sometimes 1 out of every 3, but usually about 1 out of every 4 pill will have a possible lethal dosage of fentanyl. So depending on your body weight, your tolerance to the drug, if you've been drinking, you can take a pill. You're at a party, high school party or college, frat house, take one, and you're not waking up. And if you're by yourself, no one's going to be there to realize that you're not waking up, and you're done. That's why we have so many overdoses with this drug. It's scary.
Now, speaking of deaths, Robert, you've lost friends, you've lost colleagues, cops
Right.
killed by illegal migrants. Can you tell us about that?
Well, when I joined the Phoenix PD, the very first, I was right out of the academy, and an awakening call for me. I've probably been on about 5 months, and we had 2 Phoenix officers killed during a bank robbery. A robbery detective and another 2 plainclothes guys. There was a bank robbery. Somebody saw the bank robber run into a bar. 2 officers walk in to go do follow-up, see if they could find him. And it's dead of summer. They walk into a dark bar. Their eyes hadn't adjusted. They didn't even see the guy was in the back. The guy raised up, start shooting. They were sitting ducks. And one died there at the scene. The other one died from his injuries probably 2 or 3 weeks later. So that was a start. To me, it was an eye-opener.
And he was an illegal migrant, the
Yeah,
perpetrator?
the guy was an illegal alien from Phoenix. I mean, from Mexico. But the one that 2 of them that really struck home for me, during my career with Phoenix PD, I worked a lot of undercover work. I'm a fluent Spanish speaker. I did a lot of work with DEA, and my old partner from DEA was a special agent, Richard Foss. And Richard and I did a lot of undercover deals. We would go out and buy multi-kilos of coke, large amounts of heroin. He started doing meth deals in June 30th of 1994. He was trying to do a large purchase of methamphetamine. He and a partner had flashed $140,000 to the bad guys. The money left, and the bad guys called and said, "All right, we're ready." They went and met at a body shop, unknowing that this group had no intentions of selling to the meth. They were what we call a rip crew. There's illegals that operate in our city that are just rip crews. They pretend that they sell, and they'll rip off other dealers, where they'll show up pretending they're going to have money. They pull out guns and rob people for their drugs. Well, in this case, it happened to be DEA, and they pulled out guns. They pulled out handcuffs, and they put handcuffs on. It was Richard and 2 informants and 2 bad guys, or 3 bad guys. And they pulled out guns and put one handcuff on Richard's wrist. And they were telling him, "You're going to make a phone call and have your buddy bring that money." They wanted to rip him off. We don't know what happened. We believe maybe Richard sensed they were going to execute him. So he was able to pull a gun out while he was on his knees and fire. And he hit one suspect in the chest, but the other ones start shooting at him. And the first round hit Richard's finger. Hit the trigger and his finger, blew the tip of his finger off, made his gun inoperative. So now, and it knocked the gun out of his hand. And they walked up, and as he is begging for his life, like, "Don't shoot, don't shoot," they finished him off, and they emptied a .45 into him point blank and killed him. They arrested
An American DEA agent
an American
executed here.
executed on his knees. And one of the suspects was able to flee to Mexico. He was on FBI's most wanted for, I think, close to 10 years. And they finally captured him. And of course, if one of these suspects go to Mexico, they won't extradite unless we waive the death penalty, because Mexico says they don't believe in the death penalty, but a lot of their guys get killed in interrogations or prison. So they do have a death penalty. Richard was killed, and every June 30th, a group of us go to Tucson, and we go to his gravesite, and we smoke cigars and drink tequila. And his brother joined us last year and brought a drum and played some music for him. We do it every year. The suspects are in prison. They'll die in prison, so they're there. And then another one that hit close to home. And I graduated from the academy December 1981. One of my academy classmates, we were in the academy together. We went to the same precinct together as rookies. We ended up on the same squad, and we worked as partners. During our rookie year, we were on the same squad running around. We both got married about the same time. Wives got pregnant at about the same time. So our kids, my son and his son, were born months apart. I think Shane was born 3 or 4 months before my son. We used to go camping, the whole bit. My son joins the Marine Corps after high school, goes fights in Afghanistan, is in Fallujah, Iraq. Their son joins the police department. My son was in Fallujah, Iraq at the time, and it was in 2008. I believe it was 2008. Yeah, it was 2008. And what had happened was dead asleep. And I get a phone call from another academy classmate about 2 a.m. I answer the phone, and another academy classmate says, Bobby, I got horrible news. And I was dead asleep. I thought he was calling about my son in Fallujah. And my heart sank, and he said, I said, what happened? What happened? He says, Shane was just killed in an on-duty 63, meaning a non-duty accident. Shane was a cop. Shane, so he tells me they're on their way to St. Joe, or to Good Sam. I got to the hospital at the same time Corey and his wife were getting there. And we walked in together and see Shane in his uniform, his dad, with intubation tubes sticking out of his mouth. And I look at his little face, and I picture him as my son's playmate. I could see his dimple, just a good looking kid. And the guy that killed him, he was on his way to a call in South Phoenix, and a previously deported illegal alien from Mexico, drunk on his ass, made a right-hand turn or left turn in front of him, and T-bones Shane, and he's killed. He was a new father. He had left a daughter behind, about 3 months old.
Oh,
Yeah. And this happens. I mean, it happens over and over. And the thing that's disgusting for me, as a retired Phoenix cop, I could see something that happens. I work media now. I could see something, a killing, and I could look at the name, and I could look at the location. I think circumstances. I think this is probably an illegal alien crime. I mean, I dedicated most of my career to working illegal alien drug gangs, street gangs. I worked wiretaps. I worked human smuggling cases with ICE. I worked kidnappings during the kidnapping crisis we had in Phoenix. During that time, 99.9% of our kidnappings were illegals on illegals, tied to either human smuggling or narcotics. And but anyway, the departments refuse to keep stats on illegal alien crime. We have to do it on our own. They will not keep a stat.
it's one of the reasons why the national statistics on illegal alien crime are not valid, because there's way too many police departments who just don't even ask or even purposely ignore it and hide it.
Yeah, they hide it. They purposely hide it.
Yeah.
And so
The actual illegal alien crime rate is sky high in the United States. I mean, that's just a fact.
right. And then you get this thing where the people will say, well, per the percentage of crime of a U.S. citizen, it was like, The illegal alien crime should be zero.
Thank you.
Come on, stop.
Thank you.
It should be zero.
Yep.
But
It's 100% preventable.
Right.
Every single act of violence, every criminal act from an illegal alien. Let me ask you this. Uh, the left wants us to believe that enforcing our laws, that enforcing American sovereignty, that it's somehow racist. You're born and raised in Arizona. You're of Cuban and Mexican heritage. You're fluent in Spanish. You spend a lot of time in Latin America and Mexico. Is there something racist about America? Is there something anti-Latino about America enforcing immigration laws?
no, it's you have to have. I'm not illegal immigration. I mean, I'm not illegal. I'm not anti-immigration. I'm anti-illegal immigration. We need to know who's coming into our country. There's a lot of people that come into this country. So many people want to come here to seek the American dream. They want a better life for themselves, for their kids. But what happens is so many people come here with no intention of getting a legitimate job. They're criminals in their home country. They're going to be criminals when they arrive here. And, there's no, it's dangerous for us as a country. We have to have, if we have no laws, no immigration laws, sooner or later, I mean, it's not sustainable. How are we going to pay for it? We have hospitals that closed down in the inner city. We had a hospital, Memorial Hospital, Jesse Owens, in South Phoenix. And I remember when they closed, they said, we were doing deliveries of illegal aliens were showing up. They were having deliveries and they just disappear and they're not paying their bills. All the other stuff, you're not going to have somebody
And
show
those
up at the
babies are
hospital.
American citizens.
They're American
given
citizens.
the current rule,
Right.
which
Right.
very much need to change in my view. But
And obviously, if you're sick, if you've been shot, they're not going to turn you away. They still got to treat you. And then all of a sudden, they get healed, they get treated, they disappear. Well, who's going to pay for
right,
bills?
our resources are not
Right.
endless, and we're not prioritizing American citizens. Let me ask you this too, though, because some folks watching might say, "Well, gosh, sounds like things are really bad in Arizona as a border state." And of course, it is a major problem here. But this is America's problem, isn't it? And these illegal alien criminals, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere. We say it now that every state is now a border state because when I work human smuggling cases, I would go to a house with ICE. We went to a house close by over here, 160 migrants in one house. When we hit that door, we thought there'd be 10. And as you knock that door down, the heat of so many people and the stench, the toilets will not work with that many people. They're going in bathtubs and buckets. So the thing is that when we would do our investigations, they would have notebooks we would find, and we're looking at, as people are being brought into the house, their name of their sponsor, where they're going to go, the phone number who they have to call, and the city they're going to. And I'm looking at, Kentucky, I'm looking at Wisconsin, I'm looking at Ohio, not just places that you think traditionally, Texas, maybe Miami or whatever, places that I would never think that.
Listen, I live in East Tennessee, okay?
Yeah.
Not a place you think of as being full of a lot of international folks, right? And Tren de Aragua is active in
Yes.
East Tennessee. They've been arrested. They're running prostitution rings in Chattanooga. I mean, literally in the middle of America, nowhere near the border. This is America's problem. It's not Arizona's problem.
It's a problem for our whole country. I have friends that live in Montana, and I think they've had Tren de Agua in Montana. They've had MS-13 in Montana. Sinaloa in Minnesota. Sinaloa cartel connected drug gangs are operating in Minnesota. So they're everywhere. And it's something that, you can't ignore it, because if you ignore it, and then what happens, every now and then you get some, like what happened with in Georgia, where you have some college kid out on a run and getting attacked. I mean, I can't even understand.
Sickening.
And then if you bring it up, you're a racist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're not falling for that crap. Not any longer. All right, let's talk solutions though too, right? All right, the problem's dire, right? And we need to understand how dire it is, but we can't just live there, right? In the fear. Solutions. President Trump, Tom Homan, getting going, deportations, accelerating. What are your thoughts? What are your expectations, your hopes for what's going to happen with this new administration?
I love Tom Homan. That's a great start, but the problem is the floodgates were open. How long is it going to take us just to to target the illegal alien criminals, the people that already have the deportation warrants. There are so many. I mean, um, and then we have to.
Oh, it's a mountain to climb, but we got to do it, right? I mean, we have to do it.
Yes, it's a start, and I think what we need to do, I would love to see happen, is maybe major cities or certain states, but it's hard when you got uh, sanctuary governors, sanctuary mayors that refuse to cooperate, but to form task forces, get multi-agency task forces to just start rounding up these criminals that are violent, that need to be picked up and either locked up or removed from our country. Um, we need to be more aggressive on with Phoenix right now. City of Phoenix, we have 600 openings for police officers right now. During my time, we had about a 36-man gang unit, almost 40 guys in gangs. We have about 8 detectives in gangs right now. We used to have multiple narcotics
And is that
teams.
because young people don't want to be cops now because cops aren't respected and they're not supported by politicians? What's the
The defund the police movement
Yeah.
hurt a lot of the morale for the young generation of wanting to become cops. Uh, City of Phoenix has raised the entry level, and we have people, but we're just so far behind right now. Uh, a lot of people don't want to become cops, and then the budget cuts. You know, they would rather send money to some other, social justice program within the city. And now they're starting to ramp up the recruiting, but we're losing people to retirement, or people that are during the middle of their career, which hardly ever happen. People are leaving without getting their pension. They're just I've had enough.
Yeah.
They're leaving.
Sure.
That didn't happen before. Everybody would stick around for their pension, and that's what I'm seeing with Phoenix.
Let me ask you about this idea of mine, because I want your opinion as an expert, somebody who you spent your life in law enforcement, protecting Americans here and all over the world, working for the United States. Um, these so-called sanctuary city mayors, what I believe needs to happen is we need to arrest a couple of them. A Brandon Johnson in Chicago or a Mayor Wu in Boston, when they are impeding federal law enforcement, right? When they are putting their citizens in danger, I believe they need to be arrested. Is that too extreme? What do you think?
No, I think you make some warnings and say, hey, you need to cooperate. And if they start doing what some of these mayors are doing, literally warning, they're putting out social media warnings. ICE is in this neighborhood. Let me give an example too. Here in Phoenix, the who was like the director, what is it called? The superintendent of the Phoenix Union High School District decided we don't want, this is a few years back. He's now left, and they're starting to bring him back in. He kicked the school resource officers out of all the high schools in the Phoenix metro area because he said they were threatening and it caused stress among the illegal alien community. Seeing a cop, like cops don't do immigration.
Right.
And literally he said that he was interviewed. I read this thing and I said, at the time, the largest street gang in Phoenix, we don't have MS-13 here. We don't have a large Central American population. We have illegal alien street gangs from Mexico. The largest illegal alien street gang, or the largest street gang in Phoenix at one time, was called Wetback Power. There were illegal aliens from Mexico. They had sets all over Phoenix. They had members in every single high school in the Phoenix Union Elementary School District. Drive-by shootings, stabbings in the parking lot was going on. I worked gangs. We used to have to go out. We're pulling homicide suspects as they're leaving their high school. And they're not attending class, but they're hanging out as school's letting out. And yet, he removed every single school resource officer because said it was created an unsafe environment for the illegal alien migrant community. So what are you doing? You're not punishing people like yourself that lives in a gated community. You're punishing the low income, again, people of color who have to send their kids to inner city school, and they're attending school with these illegal alien street gangs
Right.
who are heavily armed. So I think one of the other solutions is put pressure. Once you start arresting, if you arrest a mayor or two and it starts going downhill, you got some of these some of these other administrators. City of Phoenix at one time, the chief of police, when I came on, the police department was led by our chief of police. Of course, he had to answer to the city manager, but they gave him a lot of leeway. Hey, you run the department. Today, our department is run by City Hall. It's run by the city manager. And the city manager, he's like, or, you hear everything that comes out of the city manager, and the assistant city manager's office here is open borders. We're gonna create an environment that's safe to the migrant community. And then they're fear mongering. They're making the Hispanic community believe that ICE is running into churches, they're running into schools and pulling people out. Now, if they go to a house and they're going to arrest a dangerous criminal, and there happen to be some other illegal aliens in there, well, tough luck. You had a violent criminal living with you. That's on you. But there's a lot of fear mongering right now. They're making everybody believe that ICE is, parachuting into churches and everything else, which is ridiculous.
So, Robert, your governor, Katie Hobbs, was presented with a bill that was passed by the legislature that designated the cartels as terrorist organizations, which I think any reasonable person acknowledges.
Right.
She vetoed it. What are your thoughts?
It's as long as we have Katie Hobbs as governor, she's going to push back on anything, most anything that would make our citizens safer here in our state. Um, we just have to deal with her right now. The designation, the designation. I do a podcast, and we had this discussion recently in a podcast. What I believe it does, one of the things it does for me as an investigator, when you designate an organization as a terrorist organization, while you're doing, the drug cartel people, the real heavies, they're in Mexico, they're not here. But if you have a banker, if you have people that are assisting that drug cartel or that drug organization, it could be a drug gang that has ties to drug cartel. You could grab that person that is offering, assistance, or I can't remember the wording right now, but it is when you're helping facilitate the crime that these groups need you to do, whether you're renting cars, you're a straw owner for homes, for stash houses, you're renting cars for human smugglers or drug smugglers to move loads. You get those people, and they're looking at 20 years. Those are the people you want to flip.
Yeah.
You want to when you start grabbing people on the outer perimeter that are just supporting.
Yeah.
You can put a hammer to them people, and as an investigator, you're always looking to put a hammer on someone and get them to cooperate. And that gets you further up the food chain, and that is what really helps us with the designation. The other thing, you've got to go after their money. You have to attack money. And I think, even right now, I was asking guys with Phoenix PD, we used to have a squad that just did the money side on our drug investigations. I was on a wiretap group that we would lead up an investigation, go up on lines of a drug group operating in Phoenix. The Mexican side, we never touched. They're over there on that side. They're never going to come here. But we were either disrupting or dismantling the Phoenix cell, and they're always going to put somebody else in, but we're disrupting them, making it tougher on them, taking down this group, and but we always had a side that was looking at the money. They grab our part of the investigation, and with manpower shortages, I don't even think that unit exists right now with Phoenix PD.
Let me ask you about this. It's not just Latin Americans crossing Joe Biden's open border, the whole world coming in, including a lot of Chinese nationals who literally show a piece of paper of who they are, right? We have no idea who they actually are, but they're in our country now, right? Because Joe Biden invited them in. I suspect a lot of them are here for very nefarious aims, right? Whether they're spies or potential terrorists, or just common criminals. But regardless, does that aspect trouble you? That it's not just Latin Americans, it's not just Mexicans or Central Americans, not just Hondurans. It's the world came in through that open border, and now we've got to deport them.
We have a lot of state-sponsored bad guys that have arrived here. Chinese, people from the Middle East, terrorists. Like I said, we have no idea. I've talked to Border Patrol guys. I have friends that I talk to from Border Patrol, ICE, cops that are down at the U.S. border, and they find these. They're discarding their documents at the border. They need those documents as they're going to Panama, or they'll fly to some. I think some are going to Panama, and then they have smuggling groups that get them safely through Mexico. They get to the U.S. border, they discard their documents, and then we go back to honor system. What's your name? We have no idea who they are.
Yeah.
And I truly believe, I talked to some of my friends that I worked overseas, contacts from the agency, and I think we're going to get hit really bad soon. Sooner than later, I think we're going to get hit. We have state-sponsored bad guys in our country, and cells. I believe we have cells operating within our country, just waiting for that flashpoint.
And we waved them in.
Yep. Yeah, we waved them in. And during that time, when I was working, doing media work, I would go to Mexico. I would go to cross into Tijuana. I would talk to Border Patrol, and Border Patrol said, listen, right now we have about 30% of our personnel are doing what we're supposed to be doing on the border, because the other 70% are in migrant centers, changing diapers, giving bottles. My son lives in San Diego, so I drive to San Diego quite a bit. There's a Border Patrol checkpoint that during the Biden administration was pretty much closed. It was not manned. You go to Campo, you go to San Clemente, you go to the other one, I think it's around Alpine. I can't remember where I think it's Alpine. Those Border Patrol checkpoints, which are inside the U.S., traditionally made some massive seizures, they're closed. And then right after Trump took the White House, I went to visit my son, and they're operational again.
Nice.
Yeah, they're operational again.
We've got work to do.
Yeah, but I said Border Patrol was telling me 30% of us are out doing the patrol duties that we normally do.
And the rest are babysitters.
Yeah, babysitters.
Yeah.
Yeah, people were quitting left and right. They were so disgusted with it.
Sure. They want to be guards.
Yeah,
not,
right.
Yeah. They want to protect America. Speaking of that, you spent your life protecting America, and I admire it and I appreciate it, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you. It was an honor to do. I had fun every day in my job.
Awesome.
Thank you.